This is what an ad from Instagram said. Invest $100 for 40 years, you don't have to retire broke. But if I invest $100 for 40 years at a realistic return, I only end up with $349,000 after 40 years. That's not enough to be financially free. Today, I'm going to show you how to make compounding explode for you. And I'm going to show you 2 ways you can implement this tip. That said, let's jump into it. When I was in wealth management, now the day went by where I didn't talk to somebody over 50 years old that had no shot at retirement. Now at the time I asked my colleagues who I worked with why this was. And the number one reason that I got back was because people didn't invest early enough and didn't take advantage of compounding interest. I would then challenge my colleagues on that and I would say, well, you're talking about investing in the stock market, right? Stocks don't compound interest. Many would then sit there and pause, do some mental gymnastics in their head, and then come back and say, well, not compound interest, compound growth. And that's better. At least we're on the right path now. But then I would give them that example that I gave you earlier about investing $100 for 40 years, and that it only equates to $349,000, and that would be a conversation killer. At that point, I realized the reality of the financial services industry. For years, it's been dominated by major brokerage firms. So think like the Schwabs, the Fidelity. So financial planning and wealth management, it was really all about collecting more investments from people so you can charge more for it. That's where this whole thing of invest early because of compounding interest took place. And it's one of those things that the more you say it, suddenly it becomes reality. So that's how we got this myth of compounding interest is the key to financial freedom. But I wanted to dig deeper into the truth because I knew the numbers didn't make any sense. Now, to figure out this tip, I needed an easy way to build out a financial plan and see what happens over time. So that way I could easily test various strategies. Therefore, I created an algorithm that puts all this financial data into one data point. At the time I created it, I didn't have a name for it. Those of you that are FitBucks members, you now would recognize it as the FitBucks score. For months, I tried different financial ideas. And I just kept getting the same results, failure after failure. But then I realized something. I had the FitBucks score to project out all the information, but I didn't have the financial data that I was putting into it organized. It just looks like one of those really messy budgeting apps, just with like a bunch of numbers all over the place. So besides the score, I needed a way to organize the information. The easiest way that I found to build out a financial plan was to put everything into one of 3 categories. Day-to-day money, which is income and expenses. Money for future self, which is short-term savings, retirement savings, and paying off debt. And the third category is risk management, which is insurance. Now, once I had that, that's when the epiphany hit. The key to compounding your wealth and getting tangible financial freedom all has to do with that second category, money for future self. If I go back to that original example of investing $100 a month for 40 years, if I make one tweak to it, and that one tweak being that I increase that dollar amount by $25 a month each year. So this year I do $100 a month. Next year I do $125 a month. The year after that I do $150 a month. Over those same 40 years, it comes out to $1.2 million. That's a lot more than $349,000 of just compounding interest by itself. So compounding growth is not enough by itself. You need to combine compounding growth with increased contributions to that second category, money for future self. So I did that for myself as well as for others, and that's how the FitBucks financial planning method was born. But I still had one more problem in regards to using this trick to compound growth. The questions that then came up were, how much do I need to increase money going to that category, and how often do I need to do it? And that's where the 2 ways of implementing this tip come into play. So the first way to implement this is the easiest. It's where you take the absolute dollar amount that you're contributing to money for future self every month, and you decide to increase that by a given dollar amount each period. Now, what do I mean by a period? I'll show you an example. This FitBucks member currently has $375 going towards assets and $2,000 a month going towards debts. So combined I can't speak today, $2,375 a month going towards money for future self. So this individual might say something like, hey, every period, which is for him monthly, I'm going to increase this by $10 a month. So next month, I'm going to do $10,385. The next month, $2,395. You might turn around and say, no, I'm just going to do this annually and I'm going to increase it $100 a month. So again, in this example, like this year I do $2,375 a month. Next year I do $2,475. The bottom line is the more often you increase how much you're doing, the better. Now, the second way to implement this is a little bit harder, but it's the way I did it. And if you can do this, you're going to really accelerate your wealth very quickly. And what you do is you look at the percentage of your income going to this category. So going back to this example that I had earlier, this FitBucks member has about 36% of his income going towards money for future self. The ultimate goal is to get to 50% of your income going to this category. And how often do you increase it? As fast as you can. The faster you get to that 50%, the more you're going to see your wealth just accelerate dramatically. Now, if you're ready to start compounding your wealth, great. If not, and you want to keep educating yourself, be sure to watch these financial planning videos next.